Cole was already regretting saying that he liked Spencer, but Spencer didn't take it seriously.
Forget it. Let's settle the matter with Lucia first. Mr. Patrick is currently investigating the accident. If Robert is found responsible, then there will be suspicion towards that family, and that will also cause Victoria's case to crumble,
Spencer said. Cole suddenly realized, "You're right. Then you have to help Dalen investigate it as soon as possible." I
don't just like you,
Spencer said, abruptly changing the subject. Cole was stunned. His face turned red and hung up the phone. What did Spencer say? He didn't just like him? So what else? He could not accept it, even for a moment. Lucia walked over to Cole, looked at his smiling face, and asked, "What are you smiling so foolishly for?" "Ah!" Cole was so frightened that he backed up a few steps. Why are you standing behind me without making a sound? Did you eavesdrop on my call?" "Oh, so you were happy because you were on the phone?" Lucia said, with an understanding expression. "Your relationship with Spencer has advanced by leaps and bounds." "You're thinking too much." Cole felt a little embarrassed to say anything about his relationship with Spencer. After all, he didn't like Spencer until recently. It was rather embarrassing to admit it now. "What is it then?" Lucia asked. "Spencer said there is only one way to make peace between you and Dalen," Cole said. "What?" "Investigate the accident. If they find out it was Robert, his family would be in trouble. Then even Victoria wouldn't be able to escape, right? Then you would be the only one by Dalen's side," Cole explained. "But what if it wasn't Robert who caused the car accident?" Lucia asked. "After all, it's just my guess. There's no evidence." "But I think Spencer is also suspicious of Robert. Who else could it have been but him?" Cole asked. Lucia also felt that that was true. "If that's the case, then that's a good hope for me." Cole nodded encouragingly. "That must be it. And I think that maybe Dalen already has suspicions when he woke up. Otherwise, why would he be investigating the accident? No one knew that Dalen was investigating. Robert's family definitely thinks that Dalen will not investigate the incident of the car accident." Lucia nodded. She wanted Dalen to find out quickly. Then she could go back to Dalen. After work, Lucia and Cole left the company. Before they even got in the car, a man rushed over, startling Lucia. She instinctively covered her stomach. Cole noticed the strange reaction Lucia had. The man stopped in front of Lucia. "Miss Elrod, I wonder if you have time for us to talk?" Lucia noticed that the man was Mr. Richard. When she saw him, she thought about his company being acquired, and she knew what he wanted to talk to her about. The Mr. Richard from before and the Mr. Richard now were completely different. One was high-spirited and confident, while the other was dispirited and haggard. The matter with the company had dealt him quite a blow. Lucia understood that feeling very well. To be honest, Lucia was reluctant to talk about him, because even if they talked about it, there wouldn't be any way to help him. "I won't keep you long. Just for a moment, please," Mr. Richard pleaded. Cole, who was standing to the side, saw that Lucia was in a difficult situation and stepped in. "Mr. Richard, Miss Elrod has a busy day. Maybe you can go to the Patrick family to look for the person in charge of acquisitions." Mr. Richard shook his head. "There's no other way? Then how did your company survive? Why would they let your company go? Miss Elrod, can you help me plead my case? As long as you help me through this crisis, I will agree to any request you make," Mr. Richard begged. Lucia looked away. "I'm sorry, Mr. Richard. Your company has already been acquired. I am helpless." As she spoke, she prepared to get in the car. "The only reason Mr. Patrick showed you mercy is because you slept with him." Mr. Richard's face twisted. Lucia frowned slightly. Upon hearing that, Cole's face immediately changed. He yelled, "What are you talking about? Even if they slept together, Miss Elrod and Mr. Patrick are husband and wife. The purchase of the company was just a dispute between husband and wife. After the conflict had passed, naturally, there was no more talk of acquisitions. What did you say? She and Mr. Patrick are husband and wife? But that's impossible, right? I haven't heard anything about Mr. Patrick getting married. If you want to refuse, fine. Don't lie to me like that. Mr. Richard obviously didn't believe him. Lucia looked at Mr. Richard and said, "The chances of the Patrick family returning the company to you are slim. If there is a chance, I will talk to Mr. Patrick about it. You better not come to me for help again in the future." "All right, as long as you do your best. I won't come looking for you again," Mr. Richard promised. Lucia didn't say anything else and turned around to get into the car. After getting into the car, Cole said, "How could you agree to such a thing? Are you really going to ask for Dalen's help again?" Lucia looked out the window and said, "Look." Cole looked over. There was a pregnant woman standing outside. Mr. Richard saw the pregnant woman and they began talking about something. The pregnant woman smiled and looked at Mr. Richard lovingly. "Is that Mr. Richard's wife?" Cole asked. "Once, Mr. Richard told me that he had no feelings for his wife. Maybe he didn't have any feelings, but his wife is obviously pregnant. I wouldn't be at ease if I did nothing." The car drove away. Cole retracted his gaze and smiled. "Lucia, when did you become so soft-hearted? It's not like you." "What? Was my heart hard before?" Lucia asked. "Not really, but it wasn't as soft as it is now." Lucia didn't say anything. She was lost in thought as she watched the scenery outside the car window. It was not that she was soft-hearted, but she was pregnant. Cole did not follow her back to her father's house, so Lucia returned to the villa alone. Evidence of spring was everywhere. She stood at the edge of the lawn, looking at the green grass that had already grown, feeling comfortable in her heart. However, when she thought about how she should bring up the matter of Mr. Richard's company with Dalen, she became worried. Mark said not to mention it to Dalen. However, Lucia wasn't afraid to mention it. What she was afraid of was Dalen suddenly going crazy and hurting the child in her stomach. When Lucia was eating, she almost fell asleep. She yawned and went upstairs, and she didn't even have time to take a bath before she lay down on the bed. Her two small hands unconsciously pulled up the blanket, and she fell asleep. The phone in her bag rang, but she didn't even wake up. Lucia slept until the sun rose. It was almost 9 o'clock. She should tell Cole that her start time at work should be changed to 10 o'clock in the future. She needed to sleep well, since it was good for the health of the baby. After getting up, Lucia took a shower. When she walked out of the bathroom, she heard the phone in her backpack ringing. The caller ID showed Axel. Lucia didn't answer. When the ringing stopped, Lucia scrolled through the call log. Axel had also called last night, but she was already asleep at that time. She didn't want to have any contact with Axel, even on the phone. Dalen was very sensitive to her contact with Axel. With a child, she should be more careful and not provoke Dalen too much, right? When she made it to the company, Cole asked curiously, "I think you're late today." "In the future, I'll change my shift time to 10 o'clock. Lucia yawned. "Eh? Didn't you say a while ago that you wanted to be a useful company manager? Are you having second thoughts?" Cole teased her. "That's right. If you want to laugh, then laugh." Lucia didn't want to argue with him. What else could she say? She couldn't tell him that she didn't want to work so hard because she was pregnant. It wasn't that she didn't want to tell Cole. It was because if she told him, she wouldn't be able to control who knew and who didn't. Cole was horrible at keeping secrets and telling lies. Thus, it was better not to say anything. "Actually, I thought you had gone to find Dalen," Cole said as he stopped joking. Lucia remembered her promise to Mr. Richard and a headache started. "I didn't go. I think it's better if I call Dalen. Lucia turned around and entered the lounge. She started pacing back and forth with her cell phone in her hand. Was it that difficult to call Dalen? Just as she mustered up the courage to call Dalen, her phone suddenly rang. She was so shocked that she almost threw her phone. When she saw the name on the caller ID, Lucia really did want to throw her phone away. Why did Dalen call her? What was it? What was he trying to do? Lucia quickly answered, "Hello?"
Let's have lunch together.
Dalen's low voice sounded like an order. Eat? Why? There's food in my company, Lucia said.
You still owe me. Or do you forget who paid last time?
Dalen's voice turned cold. Why don't we do this? I'll give you $160. How about it? Lucia asked. You really want to argue about this? Dalen said in a warning tone. What do you mean? Lucia asked hesitantly. Wait. After Dalen said that, he hung up. Looking at the blank screen of her phone, Lucia didn't know what to do. Wait for what? For a punishment? Or to eat together? Lucia sat on the edge of the bed, her head full of thoughts. She should take advantage of this, right? This way, she could casually mention the matter of Mr. Richards' company to Dalen. When it was close to lunch, Lucia was still wandering around. She didn't know she should take the initiative to call Dalen, but the phone on the table rang. Seeing that it was Dalen, she hurriedly answered, and before she could say anything, Dalen's usual low and hoarse voice was heard.
Come down.
Then he hung up. Cole, I'm going to eat, Lucia said to Cole. Cole stood up and walked towards her. Huh? Where are you going to eat? Are you going alone? With Dalen, Lucia answered quickly. You're eating with Dalen? Cole was surprised. Was it because of Mr. Richards' company? Lucia knew what Cole was thinking and said, No, he's the one who asked me out to eat. Dalen is unpredictable. I really can't guess what he'll do next. Cole frowned. I'll see when I get there, Lucia said. Lucia carried her bag downstairs. The moment she walked out of the company, she saw Dalen's car parked outside. The black chariot, like its master, was domineering and involuble. Lucia stood not far away and took a deep breath before she walked towards the car. After Spencer opened the door, she went in, and the car drove off. Dalen sat lazily in his seat and looked at her sharply. Lucia felt slightly uncomfortable. Her small eyes flashed as she asked, Are we eating at the same place as last time? Change of location, Dalen said. Lucia nodded and said no more. Hiding the fact that she was carrying Dalen's child was so difficult. It was as though she was afraid that she would be seen through. The restaurant was still a high-end place. It was an expensive place that ordinary people could not afford. After entering the private room, Lucia saw that the prices on the menu were painfully high. However, she still said very generously, If you want to eat something, order it. I'll treat you. Don't mention it. Then, when it came to the matter of Mr. Richards' company, it would be easier to talk about it. Dalen took the menu and quickly ordered a whole table of dishes. Lucia was worried that she wouldn't be able to afford a single plate. Was that too much for you? Dalen looked at Lucia with his deep black eyes. Lucia immediately raised her face and smiled. How could I not be willing to treat you to a meal? In her heart, however, she thought that Dalen was too privileged to realize how expensive the meal really was. How could Dalen not see what Lucia was thinking? It was written all over her face. After the dishes were ordered, the waiter left. The room returned to an awkward and heavy silence. Lucia's hands rubbed against each other under the table to ease her tension. She noticed that Dalen's gaze was fixed on her face. It made her skin feel like it was being pierced, making it impossible for her to dodge. Lucia couldn't stand being stared at like that, so she asked, Do you have anything to say to me? Why do you keep staring at me? Did you do something shameful? Dalen asked suddenly. Huh? Lucia was shaken as she tried to suppress the panic in her heart. She didn't do anything. You must be mistaken. How could I possibly do something shameful? Why do you ask? Lucia tried to make herself look as if she wasn't guilty. This was an exceptionally difficult task for Lucia, but no matter how difficult it was, she had to persevere. Since you didn't do anything shameful, why are you avoiding me? Dalen recounted this fact. When did I hide from you? Lucia asked with a lack of confidence. You think I'm as stupid as you? Dalen chastised. You're the stupid one. Your whole family is stupid. Lucia was displeased to be scolded as stupid. We're husband and wife, so my family includes you, Dalen shot back. Lucia's face stiffened. She had actually forgotten about herself and the child in her womb. She really didn't use her brain. She was so angry that she was confused and couldn't find any good comeback. I was hiding from you, but I didn't do it on purpose. Is that what you want to hear? Lucia threw this question to Dalen. I thought, since you don't want me to stay in the mansion, wouldn't it be better for you if I left? When did I ever say I didn't want you to stay in the mansion? Dalen's gaze turned slightly cold. Did I have to wait for you to tell me yourself before I left? And I was unwilling to continue bearing that pain, Lucia whispered. Both of them were well aware of the situation. Lucia continued. I know you don't believe me. You don't remember anything about what happened. My explanation is useless, so I left so we wouldn't torment each other anymore. Maybe from the beginning we shouldn't have married. It's just that you were forcing me to. Dalen retracted his gaze. There was not a single trace of emotion on his face. It was a handsome face with sharp features. Lucia didn't expect Dalen to give her any support. She kept silent and let the pressure simmer. There was a knock on the door, and the staff came in with the dishes. After that, they started to eat. Neither of them said anything. In the midst of the silence, Lucia heard these low and indifferent words. Move back to the mansion. Lucia was stunned and raised her head. Dalen, did you say something? If it's not me, then it's a ghost. Dalen's face darkened. Why should I go back to the mansion? Lucia asked. It's good for me to recover my memories, Dalen explained. Lucia went silent and did not reply to him. Dalen was annoyed by Lucia's silence. You'd better think this through. There won't be a chance like this again. It was a precious opportunity, yet she didn't immediately accept. Then you don't mind what happened between me and Jeff? Lucia asked. Dalen's face turned cold. Before I recover my memories, I will not pursue this matter. But if I find out about your indiscretion, I'll make the mansion your tomb. Lucia was stunned by his answer. Do you have an objection? Dalen's black eyes turned cold. Lucia lowered her gaze. You don't mind, but I do. I mind if there's another woman in the mansion. Even if Spencer said that Dalen and Victoria weren't close, she didn't want that kind of woman to show off her strength in Lucia's own territory. As long as she was still Dalen's wife, she was qualified to ask for that. There's another condition, Lucia began. Dalen gave a cold smile. You have quite a lot of requirements. Lucia smiled weakly. 2 more. Speak. Dalen didn't mind listening to her conditions. Can you return Mr. Richards' company? Lucia quickly continued explaining when she saw Dalen's sinister expression. Don't misunderstand. I really have nothing to do with Mr. Richard. It's just that his wife is pregnant, which is very pitiful. Besides, you don't need a small company like that anyways. Dalen didn't show any more emotions. He simply said, Continue. Last one. When I return to the mansion, you cannot touch me, Lucia said. Dalen opened his mouth and spoke with a tense face. Get out of here before I lose the last of my patience. Lucia pursed her lips, held her breath, grabbed her bag, and ran out of the room without stopping. She ran out of the restaurant like a wisp of smoke. As Lucia stood by the side of the road and looked back, She didn't see Dalen. Only then did she heave a deep sigh of relief. Lucia clutched her stomach. "Don't be afraid. Mummy is here." Did Dalen have to have such a huge reaction? Lucia looked at the traffic in the middle of the road blankly, thinking that she really didn't feel happy at all when Dalen told her to move back to the mansion. The reason why she had made so many requests was that she didn't want to go back. Firstly, her first child would be in danger in the mansion. Secondly, she was afraid that Dalen would touch her. The child was too precious. Lucia knew that Dalen would never agree to her 3 requests. Kicking out Victoria, giving back Mr. Richards' company, and not touching her? Unless Dalen had a major change of heart, he would never agree to all 3. Lucia wanted to make peace, but moving back to the mansion was not the answer. She needed to care for the child in her womb. When Lucia returned to the villa, she saw Axel sitting inside the hall waiting for her. It stunned her for a moment. When Axel saw her, he stood up with a smile on his face. "You're back?" Lucia walked forward with a calm demeanor. "Why are you here?" "I called you, but you didn't answer. I thought you might be ignoring me," Axel said. "I may not have noticed your call," Lucia said. The servant walked over and asked, "Miss Lucia, do you want some food now?" Lucia looked at Axel and asked, "Have you eaten dinner?" Axel shook his head. "I still have some things to take care of. I just came to see you and make sure you're okay. I'll be leaving." After Axel said this, he really left. Lucia was dazed for a moment as she heard the sound of a car leaving the driveway. Perhaps Axel had already seen through her thoughts. It would have been dangerous to keep Axel here for dinner. It was bad enough that he had been here even just for a moment. When Lucia first saw Axel here, her first reaction wasn't to be surprised, but rather to be shocked because she was afraid of Dalen. What if Dalen went crazy and hurt the child? He has always been so gentle and considerate, right? Lucia turned around and saw that the servant was still standing there respectfully. She then said, "Come over here for a moment." When the servant stood in front of her, Lucia asked, "Are you the one who tells Dalen whenever someone comes to visit me?" The servant lowered his head and did not speak. Silence was admittance. "I don't blame you. I know it was Dalen's order. However, as you can see, Dalen and I don't have a good relationship right now. That's why I came back here. It's just that I can't have you telling everything that happens here to Dalen." Lucia looked at the servant, who still didn't dare to say a word, and said, "The man who came to see me just now was just a friend. But if you tell Dalen, he will definitely not believe that. And if you are going to tell Dalen, then I can't let you work here anymore." The servant was shocked and said, "But Mr. Patrick told me to stay here and not leave." "This is my home, not Dalen's. Do you understand? If I say you go, then you will go." Lucia felt that she didn't need to say much more. However, since the other party was Dalen, she had to say it again. "I'll just ask you once. Will you tell Dalen about what just happened? Will you tell Dalen about everything that happens here in the future? You should think about it carefully. If you say that you will help me, there might be a place for you when I return to the mansion." But, what if Mr. Patrick asks me?" the servant stammered. "In the past 2 months, has Dalen asked you anything?" Lucia asked. The servant shook his head. "He lost his memories and can't remember anything. You don't have to worry that he will come looking for you. As long as you don't say anything, he doesn't know anything," Lucia explained. The servant thought for a moment, then nodded in agreement. "I understand." Only now did Lucia feel satisfied. If she didn't do something, the servant would have told Dalen about Axel's visit. Dalen would not have let her off easy. The longer she didn't have her period, the more certain Lucia was that she was pregnant. She knew she couldn't be wrong. She even had nausea and had been sleeping deeply every night. She went to bed early at night and got up very late in the morning. Afraid that Cole would suspect her, Lucia said that she didn't sleep well at night and had to take a nap in the office's lounge during the day. She had concealed it well, and no one had suspected her. As for Dalen, it had been almost 10 days since she made that request, and she had heard nothing from him. Right now, her relationship with Dalen was stuck. Lucia hoped that she could come up with a good plan before her stomach started showing signs of pregnancy. Or perhaps Dalen had officially given up on her. At the Patrick offices across town, the family was holding a meeting of the upper echelons. Dalen was sitting in the highest position. Mark looked at Dalen's face. He looked no different from usual, but Mark could tell that his mind was wandering. This was a very surprising thing. He had never seen Dalen absent-minded during a meeting. What was he thinking? Mark couldn't tell. The meeting ended. Mark followed Dalen into his office, and Dalen's expression did not improve at all. "Mr. Patrick, I have a document that I need you to look over." Dalen received it expressionlessly and opened it. Mark stood in front of the desk and waited. Buried in the file, Dalen leaned against the edge of his desk and lazily asked, "Have you remarried?" Facing such a sudden question, Mark was inwardly surprised. "Not yet," he said. "Originally, the wedding was to be held this month. However, since the company is so busy, we haven't had time to plan." "That's my fault," Dalen said lightly, without a hint of embarrassment. However, Mark was very careful in his answer to Dalen. "I don't think so." Dalen did not continue this topic. He threw the document on the table. Dalen sat down in the black chair. "Who is dealing with the issue of Longevity's acquisition?" he asked. "Axel," Mark replied. "Pass on my orders. He is to cancel the acquisition immediately. It's no longer profitable for us," Dalen said. Mark immediately understood. "Yes, sir." After leaving the office, Mark was surprised. Axel would never believe this reason. Could it be that Lucia was involved? Before he could get to the elevator, his phone rang. Looking at the caller, he immediately picked up. "Mr. Patrick?"
"Warn Mr. Richard to never go near Lucia or her company again. There is no next time,"
Dalen said. "Yes, sir." Mark wasn't surprised when he hung up the phone. It was just as he thought. The reason for the purchase was because of Lucia, and now the reason for the cancellation was also because of her. It seemed that even if he forgot about Lucia, his nature was still deeply rooted. Dalen returned to the mansion at around 10 o'clock. Inside, Victoria was sitting on the sofa, dozing off. It seemed like she was waiting for him. Dalen looked at Victoria. His heart, however, didn't have the slightest fluctuation. It was as steady as still waters. After he lost his memory, it seemed that only Lucia could cause fluctuations in his emotions, even if it was anger. Only she could arouse his true anger. When she told him the story about the crystal wolfhound, he knew that the pain in his heart was definitely not a coincidence. As Lucia walked down the street by the company, she felt that Cole was right when he had said that she was becoming more soft-hearted now. She thought so herself. In the past, she didn't pay beggars when she saw them on the road. But now, when Lucia saw a couple of beggar girls huddled together, she walked over and placed some money in the beggar's bowl. "Lucia?" Lucia paused for a moment. She saw Maddie sitting next to the beggar. "Maddie?" Lucia was very surprised. "Why are you here?" "Let me introduce you. This is my friend, Agatha. Agatha, this is my friend, Lucia." Agatha extended her hand to shake Lucia's hand and said, "You were obviously a kind-hearted person." Lucia laughed. It was rare for her to meet Maddie's friends. Maddie and Lucia decided to go to the dessert shop to catch up. They both ordered a plate piled high with desserts. They were sweet and very tasty. "Before I met Jeff, I begged with Agatha," Maddie explained. Lucia nodded. Maddie looked at Lucia, who was eating the dessert quickly, and said, "Lucia, I'm sorry." Lucia was stunned. "Sorry about what?" "What happened last time we saw each other? I'm sorry for what I did," Maddie said. "Didn't you already apologize on the phone? You don't have to do this." Lucia had forgotten about the whole matter. Besides, Maddie didn't do it on purpose. Maddie shrugged. Even so, I'm still angry at Jeff. He deliberately said things to make you and Dalen fight. And when I said that, well, I didn't tell you about it on the phone, but I want to tell you about it now. Maddie trailed off. It's fine. It's fine even if you don't want to tell me, Lucia said. You don't even know what I've been through the past couple of weeks. Maddie's face was filled with despair. Looking at Maddie, Lucia couldn't figure out what had happened. However, she knew that Jeff was not a good person. Could it be that something horrifying had happened? Lucia was shocked and asked, Has Jeff mistreated you? Yes. Maddie nodded vigorously. I'm married. He forced me to marry him. Lucia's mouth was wide open in shock, and she could not close it for a long time. I still can't accept that Jeff and I are husband and wife. Maddie was on the verge of going crazy. She held her head with both hands, feeling a headache coming on. So, what you said the other day, you wanted Jeff to be with me so that he would divorce you? Lucia asked. Maddie bit her lips and nodded. Lucia sighed deeply. She didn't want any more dessert, so she threw the spoon into the bowl. What was going on? Lucia was shocked by Jeff's action. Thinking about the relationship between Jeff and Maddie, she couldn't help but ask, Jeff isn't actually related to you, right? Maddie shook her head. I always thought he was your uncle or something, Lucia said as she heaved a sigh of relief. Maddie frowned. But he can't just treat me like this, right? I remember, didn't you already sleep with him a while ago to get revenge? Lucia was referring to the matter of framing Jeff when she and Maddie first met. I just pretended. We didn't really do anything, Maddie explained. Then what did you do that made him want to take you in? Lucia asked. Maddie thought for a while. She didn't remember what she did to make Jeff do that. She pointed at her face and asked, Do you think a normal man would like a face like mine? No, Lucia said truthfully. Lucia, you've known Jeff for so long. Do you think that something might be wrong with him? Maddie asked. From what I know of Jeff, I think he must be mentally twisted and abnormal. Ordinary people do not attract his attention at all, Lucia mused. It'd be impossible for Jeff to like me. I'm pretty sure that Jeff likes you. Maddie was puzzled. Lucia cleared her throat and asked, Who told you he liked me? Isn't it obvious? Maddie looked depressed. If he likes me, then I will give him rat poison. Lucia gritted her teeth. Maddie drew back. Lucia had such a scary look in her eyes. Maddie's cell phone rang. As soon as she saw the caller ID, her face fell. Lucia looked at Maddie. Although her face was ugly, it was still quite cute. She couldn't understand why Jeff would force Maddie into marriage. What was he doing? But no matter what Jeff was doing, as long as it didn't involve her, it would be fine. At this critical juncture, she had to stay away from Jeff, as far away as possible. Lucia, I'm going back, Maddie said after finishing the call. Lucia put down the dessert in her hand and said meaningfully to Maddie, If there's really no way to deal with Jeff, then we'll just wait for a solution. You want me to do nothing? Maddie moaned. What else can we do? Maddie shrugged. Lucia continued. That's right. You won't be able to gain anything by fighting against Jeff. Maddie trusted Lucia's advice. Maybe this was how she dealt with Dalen. Maddie took her cell phone and boarded a bus, wobbling as she arrived at the platform. Then she would have to walk a long way to reach Jeff's mansion. Why must a mansion be so far from the city? Just as she was about to leave, her cell phone started ringing. Maddie looked, and it was Jeff again. She answered, Hello, handsome.
You haven't come back yet.
Jeff growled impatiently. Maddie pouted. That's right, I'm on my way back. Your stupid mansion is so far away from the bus stop. There are no cars here. If I don't walk back, do you want me to fly back? Maddie asked sarcastically. Maddie waited for a response and couldn't help feeling a little scared in her heart. With her playful personality, Jeff wouldn't lose his temper with her, right? Just as she was about to give an explanation, the call ended. Maddie was stunned for a moment. Crap. Jeff is really angry. She wanted to cry, but no tears came out. If she had known earlier, she would not have teased him. Not long after, she heard the sound of a car. When she looked up, she saw the car coming from the direction of the mansion. Was that Jeff's car? The car stopped in front of her. Jeff stepped out with a cold expression and stopped in front of Maddie. His pair of dark eyes looked down at her. Did you come to pick me up? Maddie thought of her impudence on the phone and immediately smiled sweetly. Don't you know how to take a taxi back? Jeff's face was calm. Jeff saw her expression and calmed down a little. Get in. Maddie carried her bag and climbed into the car. Her eyes had to be on guard around Jeff. Jeff had been glaring at her. Could it be that he knew what Maddie was thinking? When they arrived at the mansion, Jeff got out of the car and directly said, From today onwards, I'll give you a car. Why would you give me a car? Maddie thought to herself, if I had a car, I wouldn't be able to take a bus or take a taxi. Jeff's driver would supervise her at all times. It can't be like this. This wasn't like Lucia, who runs her own company and has her own driver. I don't want a car. Next time I'll take a taxi back. I won't take the bus. Maddie hurriedly refused. Why not? Jeff's expression turned cold. Then it's too ostentatious. Maddie didn't tell the truth. You're Mrs. Holmes now. I could give you a plane. Jeff sneered and said. Maddie opened her mouth in shock, afraid that Jeff would really prepare a plane for her. In the city, a plane is a waste. And I mean it. No car. I prefer to take a taxi. She didn't want to be Jeff's Mrs. Holmes. She was still angry at Jeff. Jeff looked at her sharply. If you don't want a car, then what are you doing behind my back? What did you just do? Maddie took a deep breath. I went to see Lucia. I can't go comfort her and apologize to her again, Maddie said with an unhappy expression. Jeff's expression immediately changed. Who told you to apologize? Maddie was angered. I went there myself. Can't I make my own decisions? I don't understand why you deliberately cause problems for them. Could it be that seeing Lucia and Dalen like this makes you feel good? If you like Lucia, even if you marry me, Lucia wouldn't dare to say it out loud, no matter how much she likes you. What did you say? Jeff was confused by Maddie's words and just stood there in a daze. Anyway, the one who is most baffling is you, Maddie said angrily before turning around and heading back inside the house. Jeff stood there with an ugly expression. Maddie ran back to her room and saw many small and exquisite gift boxes on her bed. She opened them one by one. Beautiful dresses, shoes, and jewelry. But why was it on her bed? Maddie ran out of the room. When she saw Jeff, who was going upstairs, she ran over. Jeff! Due to her impatience, Maddie called out the wrong name. You seem to like calling me that. Just call me that from now on, Jeff said calmly. Maddie thought, why is Jeff being so generous? Why is he letting me call him that now? Jeff walked forward and approached Maddie step by step. Maddie retreated in panic. Her heel hit the hard wall. Jeff, who was in front of her, continued to advance. Maddie stretched out her small hand to stop Jeff's chest in panic, but her arms were too weak. However, she still persevered with both willpower and strength, afraid that Jeff would get closer. Jeff's thin lips came beside Maddie's ear. he said in a deep and melodious voice, "because when I think about what you will call me in bed in the future, I feel very excited. Right now, I wish I could do something." Maddie could not believe Jeff's words. When she thought about being in bed with him, her ears started to burn. "Maddie, are you shy?" Jeff's voice was very evil. No, I won't do it with you," Maddie said. "Which one?" Jeff teased. Maddie didn't want to discuss this with him. Jeff asked, even though he already knew the answer. "Stay away from me." Maddie lowered her head, unwilling to face him. She used her hand to push away Jeff's chest. She felt that she could not hold on any longer. Jeff looked at her and thought to himself, "If I really want to do this, you can't stop me." But thinking there was still something else, he slowly let go of her and took a step back. He was not as close as before, but the pressure was still heavy. "You have something to talk to me about?" Jeff asked. Maddie snapped back to reality. "Yes, something on the bed. What does that mean? You're not going to buy me clothes again, are you?" "We're going to eat with the family tonight for dinner," Jeff explained. "What? The Holmes family? Your family?" Maddie asked. "The new wife has to see the parents-in-law, don't you think?" Jeff asked calmly. Maddie could not believe Jeff's logic at all and was furious. "Why did you do that? We cannot let your dad know that we're married." Jeff shrugged. "It's not like he didn't see the news." Maddie had forgotten about the news, even though she had seen it. However, Stacy didn't seem to know. Maddie knew her mom didn't really watch the news. However, Jeff's dad was different. After all, he still had a company, so he kept up on the news. "That news, you didn't do it on purpose, did you?" Maddie asked, looking suspiciously at Jeff. Jeff's eyes immediately turned cold. "Say that again?" Maddie pursed her lips, indicating that she didn't want to repeat it. "Go in and change your clothes." Jeff felt that his patience was getting worse with each passing day. Maddie stood there without moving. "You want me to help you change them?" Jeff threatened. Maddie's body shuddered as she turned around and ran back to her room. She didn't want Jeff to help her change. Didn't that mean everything would be seen by him? Jeff looked at Maddie's fleeing figure, thinking about that piece of news. He had already discovered earlier that it was leaked by the homeschool teacher. It was because she saw him kissing Maddie, saw through his abnormal relationship with Maddie, that she was able to take revenge. She was simply courting death. After Maddie was dressed, she looked at herself in the mirror. She was very beautiful. However, when she thought of the fact that she was wearing these clothes in order to go to the Holmes family, her mood immediately turned sour. Mr. Holmes did not like her mother, and she was Stacy's only daughter. After getting in the car, they headed towards the Holmes household. Along the way, Maddie was quite nervous. She looked out the window, then she looked at Jeff. "With me here, what's there to be nervous about?" Jeff comforted her. "It's fine if your dad already knows about the news, but when the time comes, we'll explain. But please don't mention that we've already gotten our certificates." "I know what to do," Jeff said as he looked out the window. Maddie heaved a sigh of relief. When they arrived at the Holmes household, Maddie looked around the villa. Stacy had told Maddie that she had been here when she was young. However, she had no memory of her time here at all. There was only a sense of unfamiliarity. It was normal for her to not be able to remember, since it was so long ago. When Jeff looked over, Maddie immediately sped up to keep up with Jeff's pace. Jeff stopped walking and looked at Maddie with his black eyes. "What's wrong? Is there something on my face?" Maddie asked. "No, but your collar is a bit messy," Jeff said. "Huh?" Maddie was about to straighten out her collar when Jeff reached out his hand to help her. This was the Holmes household, not their house. "I'll do it myself." Maddie tried to avoid him. "Don't move." Jeff's voice sank. Maddie did not dare to move. She just stood there and let Jeff organize everything for her. Her bright eyes were flashing, as if she was afraid that someone was watching them. Would you be nervous if I kissed you now? Although Jeff was fixing Maddie's collar, he was still paying attention to her. What? Maddie jumped away. You're not allowed to kiss me. How could Jeff be so unbridled? Jeff wasn't really going to kiss Maddie. When he saw that Maddie wasn't as nervous as she was before, he turned around and walked into the room. Maddie thought of something and held Jeff's arm. You want to kiss? Jeff asked as he slightly lowered his head. Kiss? No, I don't want to kiss. Maddie lowered her voice and withdrew her head. You still haven't told me. What should I call your dad? Jeff shrugged. Call him whatever you want. Maddie nodded thoughtfully. After entering the hall, Maddie immediately saw Mr. Holmes, who was sitting on the sofa in the hall. Her heart tensed up. The only person she could rely on now was Jeff, and he was the person she didn't want to rely on. There was no helping it, though. She wasn't familiar with the Holmes family. When Grandfather saw the look in Mr. Holmes' eyes, she immediately bowed deeply and called out, Grandfather! Jeff, who was walking in front, kicked the foot of the coffee table and sat down on the sofa as usual. Stephen Holmes still hadn't recovered from his shock of seeing Maddie's frightening appearance. His face distorted even more when he heard Maddie's address. Grandfather? He would not recognize Stacy, much less her daughter. He didn't expect Stacy's daughter to be this ugly. Why did he remember that she was so cute when she was young? But with Jeff here, it wasn't good to get angry. Did you hear Maddie when she called you? Jeff said to Stephen. Do you think that's appropriate? Stephen turned hostile. Jeff was not afraid of his father at all, but there were some things that he would find troublesome if they were not resolved. Therefore, he had brought Maddie back home. This had to happen sooner or later. However, thinking of his purpose for the day, he could only bear with it. What are you standing there for? Sit down, Stephen said as he glanced at Maddie, who was standing there. Maddie immediately said, Thank you, Grandfather. She sat down. Stephen's mouth was filled with an unpleasant taste as he endured her company patiently. Maddie sat beside Jeff with her 2 hands on her knees. She took a deep breath to adjust her emotions. Stephen once again set his gaze on Maddie. He naturally had seen the news on the internet. When he found out, he immediately called Jeff to confirm the matter. Jeff didn't say yes, nor did he say no. He just said when he would bring Maddie home for dinner. If it wasn't for Stephen knowing his son's temper, he would have lost his patience long ago. At first, he had been uneasy about the news, but now that he saw it, he thought he might be worrying about the wrong thing. This was because Maddie's appearance was really hard to look at. Just a single glance was enough to hurt his eyes. Forget about being ugly. Was that hairstyle from a bomb? Stephen had originally been prepared to interrogate his son. Now he could only say, It's better not to pursue matters like this. This would damage your image. Maddie sat obediently at Jeff's side. She guessed that Stephen was referring to the news about her and Jeff. She didn't dare to speak. She stealthily turned her gaze towards Jeff. Jeff didn't say anything. It was as if Stephen's words had nothing to do with him. Instead, he raised his hand to look at his watch and asked impatiently, Is it time for dinner? I'm waiting for someone, Stephen said. Jeff frowned unnoticeably. Suddenly, Lydia, who was dressed elegantly, walked in. Sorry, the road was a bit blocked. I'm sorry if I made you wait for a long time. No, your timing is just right. Stephen did not introduce Maddie when he greeted Lydia. However, Lydia didn't ignore Maddie and took the initiative to greet her. Long time no see, Maddie. Maddie smiled. Hello. Lydia immediately turned her gaze towards Jeff. From the moment she entered, she didn't even give him a glance. Jeff, you don't mind that I came to eat, do you? Lydia asked with a gentle smile on her face. Jeff still didn't look at her. His cold eyes looked at his father. Stephen's gaze flashed a warning. Why would I mind? If you want to come over for dinner, I have no objections, Jeff said to Lydia. When Lydia heard this, she was so happy that she couldn't suppress the joy on her face. All right, let's go to the dining room, she said. After entering, Maddie prepared to sit by Lydia. However, Jeff pulled her to a seat beside him without any expression. Maddie directly fell into her seat. The others all saw Jeff's overbearing behavior. Stephen's face was shocked. It was rather unsightly. Lydia's expression was stiff, but she tried her best to maintain her elegance. The news from the internet popped up in her mind. Thinking about Maddie, the jealousy in Lydia's heart almost made her want to burn. Why was she here? If not for her, the marriage between her and Jeff would have been inevitable. Less than 10 minutes later, Stephen spoke. Jeff, you're not young anymore. I think it's best for us to settle the marriage that we discussed with you before. I don't think it's possible for you to be trusted with this decision. So I have made the decision to have you and Lydia get married next month. Jeff's expression didn't change at all. Maddie was stunned for a moment when she heard this, but in her heart she felt happy. If Jeff and Lydia got married, then wouldn't Jeff have to divorce Maddie first? Just as Maddie suppressed the joy in her heart, she saw Jeff slowly touch the corner of his mouth with his napkin and say, I'm afraid I can't. Why not? Let me tell you, if you don't get married to Lydia, you're going to make a mess of it. Stephen had already made up his mind. No matter how Jeff refused, Stephen still insisted. Didn't you say that as long as I get married, anyone would do? Jeff was neither impatient nor agitated as he responded. Maddie felt that something was wrong. When Jeff said this, she had a bad premonition and immediately felt goosebumps all over her body. I said that, but you haven't done anything yet, Stephen argued. Says who? In fact, I'm already married, Jeff said plainly. Married? Stephen was very surprised. Lydia's expression changed many different colors. As for Maddie, she could no longer eat. Her bright eyes were filled with fear. Jeff turned around and said to Maddie, Maddie, you shouldn't call him grandfather. Call him father-in-law. Maddie's body trembled and the fork in her hand dropped to the ground. Stephen and Lydia both looked at Maddie, whose eyes were glazed, as if they couldn't understand Jeff's words. After a long while, Stephen slammed the table and stood up, pointing at Jeff. What do you mean? Explain it clearly to me. I would think that with your intelligence, you should be able to understand, Jeff said, without changing his expression. Stephen, on the other hand, was trembling so violently that he could no longer speak. Lydia also could not believe what she had heard. With sadness in her eyes, she still wanted to correct Jeff's misbehavior. Jeff, how can you do this? With Maddie, of all people. Jeff looked at Lydia with his dark eyes. She is now my wife. Maddie, let's go. Maddie's body trembled again. She no longer dared to look at Stephen and Lydia's faces. She wished she could find a hole to hide in. She stood up and followed Jeff out of the dining room. Jeff, stop right there. Stephen was furious. However, Jeff did not turn back. Maddie didn't dare to look back. Outside, the car door opened and Jeff was about to get in, but Maddie got in the car first. Jeff paused for a moment and got into the car behind her. The door closed and the car left the Holmes household. Only then did Maddie raise her head. Jeff, you did that on purpose. What did I do on purpose? Jeff asked. You didn't bring me here to eat, but to tell your dad about us getting married, Maddie said angrily. What's the problem? Jeff asked. Maddie couldn't believe that he was so calm. There's a big problem. Why did you tell him about our marriage? Maddie yelled. It was going to happen sooner or later. Jeff shrugged. No, I'm not going to marry you. The license is useless. I want a divorce. Maddie was so angry that she wanted to jump out of the car. The marriage certificate is gone, Jeff said simply. We can still make it so that it's invalid, Maddie argued. You did your homework. Jeff looked at her coldly. Maddie nodded. Look, you don't want to get into a fight with your dad, do you? That's so embarrassing, isn't it? I don't care, Jeff said. You don't care? This whole marriage is ridiculous. Maddie was so anxious that she couldn't think of anything. Jeff looked at Maddie with a cold expression, and then he pounced like a wolf. Ah! Maddie, who was caught off guard, couldn't react in time and was pressed down by Jeff. Jeff, what are you doing? Jeff held her jaw. Jeff, let me go! Maddie wanted to kick him with her foot, but her legs were pressed to the ground. Didn't you say I'm abnormal? Jeff asked. Maddie widened her eyes. Jeff continued. The word divorce can only be mentioned by me. Understand? The next time I hear you mention divorce, you'll regret it. It was obvious that he was trying to intimidate her. Then when are you going to mention it? Maddie asked. Never. Jeff let her go after he saw that she was obedient. He sat back in his chair and looked at her with a dark, unreadable gaze. Maddie only calmed down after she was let go, and then pouted. I know why you insist on marrying me. You're just using me as a shield. That way your dad can't match you with Lydia. So what? Jeff asked unconcernedly. Aren't you being selfish by doing this? You didn't even get my permission. Maddie's bright eyes glistened with tears. Hearing Jeff's hasty reply, she got even angrier. How could he do this to her? Jeff was stunned as he saw the tears welling up in Maddie's eyes. His expression turned serious as she calmed down, but he would never divorce her for crying. Jeff had no experience comforting crying women. Thus, when Maddie's tears fell, Jeff directly dragged her over. He directly kissed Maddie's pouting little mouth. Maddie's head buzzed. She was still crying. Why did he kiss her now? When she came back to her senses, she immediately struggled. However, Jeff grabbed both of her hands and held them down to her sides. Ugh! Maddie's foot kicked the door, and it flew open. Jeff's eyes darkened, and he held tight to Maddie. Luckily, the car had stopped at a traffic light. Stop! Let go of me! Maddie said, trying to get out the door. Jeff reached over and quickly shut the car door again before they continued driving. Maddie was still hoping to kick him like that when she suddenly felt that something was wrong. Maddie widened her eyes in shock. At this moment, she was wearing a short skirt, and she was kicking her legs like a fool. And what was Jeff doing? By the time Jeff let go of her, Maddie was slumped in her seat, her legs shaking. One could imagine what had happened to her just now. Maddie's mind was a mass of white. There were tears in her eyes, but they were no longer tears that came out of grievance. Jeff let go of her hands and held her jaw. He looked at her rosy lips and asked, How was it? Maddie looked at him with wide eyes. She was still breathing rapidly and had not stabilized yet. It would be more comfortable if we were in bed. Jeff's voice was hoarse, and his breath seemed to be hotter. Maddie's mind gradually cleared up. Of course, she understood what he meant. Shamefully, she looked away. Jeff noticed her expression. His cold eyes were tender and fierce. Don't worry, I won't touch you now. But if you provoke me again, I won't be able to hold back. With that, he stared at Maddie's face and returned to his seat. Maddie immediately sat up straight and arranged her messy dress. crossing her legs in a very orderly fashion. That feeling just now was still unbelievable. It was a feeling she had never experienced before, but she knew what it was. She was an adult, after all, so she understood. She didn't know how to resist anymore. She was clearly questioning Jeff and felt very confused. But now, her body was still trembling. And Jeff said that if they really went all the way, it would be even more intense. Maddie thought it was a terrible thing to get married. It couldn't be that Jeff would do that to her one day, right? After getting home, Maddie didn't talk to Jeff and just ran straight back to her room. Jeff looked at Maddie running away and did not stop her. He just looked at her beautiful figure and her snow-white, slender legs, thinking about the feeling of touching her in the car. He calmed down with great difficulty. Jeff's face tightened as he turned around and went to the study room. Maddie woke up the next morning and went downstairs to see Jeff in the hall. Upon recalling what happened yesterday, her complexion immediately turned unnatural. "I'll take you to school," Jeff said when he saw her. No need," Maddie mumbled. Jeff glanced at her, and Maddie knew that argument was futile. After breakfast, Maddie got into Jeff's car and went straight to school. Maddie would normally have something to say in the car, but now she just stared out the window. After arriving at the school, Maddie wordlessly got out of the car and ran straight to the school. She never thought that her and Jeff's relationship would develop to such an extent. In class, it was easy to be distracted, thinking about what had happened in the car. Even at night, she had dreams she shouldn't have. Maddie ran to the bathroom to wash her face with cold water, trying to clear her head. Looking at her swollen eyes in the mirror, she questioned everything. Why did she keep thinking about it? Isn't it just... What should she do? Maddie, who was very conflicted, wandered aimlessly onto the street at noon. She felt like she was really going crazy now. To be honest, she didn't even dare to see Jeff now. "What a coincidence, Maddie." Maddie snapped out of her gaze and realized that Lydia had walked up to her. Are you here to buy books?" Maddie had bumped into Lydia last time at the bookstore. "No, I was just passing by." Lydia looked Maddie up and down and asked, "Have you eaten?" "Not yet." Maddie was in no mood to eat. "That's great. I haven't either. Let's go eat together," Lydia suggested. "I'm not going. I don't really want to eat." Maddie was thinking about what happened at the Holmes household yesterday. Now that she was Jeff's wife and everyone knew about it, she was uncomfortable around others. Of course, she didn't want to go eat with Lydia. "Actually, eating is secondary. The main thing is that I want to tell you something," Lydia explained. When they reached the restaurant, the two of them sat down. The waiter brought 2 menus for them to order. After ordering a few things, Lydia called for the waiter. "She is already ordered," Lydia said, gesturing to Maddie. Maddie's hand that was holding the menu stiffened, and she directly passed the menu to the waiter. She hadn't even ordered a single dish, so what did Lydia mean by this? "What were you going to tell me?" Maddie had lost her appetite even more. "Did you really get the marriage certificate with Jeff?" Lydia asked, not a hint of a joking expression on her face. Maddie had already guessed what she was going to ask. It wasn't like she couldn't tell that Lydia liked Jeff and wanted to marry him. "Yes." Maddie nodded. "Then do you think you're worthy of Jeff?" Lydia smiled mockingly. She used to pretend to be a good person in front of Maddie, but now she didn't bother to pretend. Maddie was stunned by Lydia's attitude and was angered by her words. Why would I not be worthy of him? Maddie just wanted to know why Lydia said that. Lydia scoffed. "Don't you look in the mirror every day? Your face is so ugly. Doesn't Jeff feel disgusted when he sees you?" Anger was written all over Maddie's face. How could this woman say such words? I know that my words are a bit straightforward, but I am speaking the truth. I really didn't expect you to be so thick-skinned as to marry Jeff. I advise you to quickly get divorced, otherwise it will become ugly. Lydia paid no heed to her own venomous words. When she found out the truth of Maddie's marriage to Jeff, she went crazy. Now that she saw the anger on Maddie's face, she finally calmed down a little. How did the ugly Maddie catch Jeff's eye? Lydia was much better than Maddie, and Maddie couldn't even compare to her. Why didn't Jeff give her a chance, or even a mere look? Actually, I don't understand it either, Maddie said as she suppressed the anger in her heart. What don't you understand? Lydia was stunned by her words. I don't understand why Jeff wants to marry me when he doesn't even look at you. Maybe it's because you're so ugly inside. You know, Jeff is very smart. It's impossible for him to not see how ugly your heart is, Maddie said. Lydia didn't expect Maddie to counterattack her. Her expression was extremely unsightly, but her words were strong. Lydia scoffed. Your skin is so thick, no wonder your mother wasn't accepted by the Holmes family back then. She must be a shameless woman. Please don't involve my family. Maddie was so angry that her breathing became erratic. She glared at Lydia coldly. Did I say something wrong? Didn't I just say the truth again? I'm very sorry. Lydia rolled her eyes. You're the one who's so disgusting. No wonder Jeff doesn't like you. I don't think any man would want a hag like you. Maddie cursed furiously. After she finished, she stood up and left. Lydia was so angry that her entire body was trembling. She wanted nothing more than to kill Maddie. Maddie rushed back to the school with an angry expression. Maddie was in a terrible mood after the conversation. She didn't even want to be married to Jeff. She was forced. It was all Jeff's fault. If he didn't force her, none of this would have happened. The students were chattering in class, which gave Maddie quite a bit of time to think. Perhaps she should transfer to a different university. Then she wouldn't have to face Jeff every day. When Maddie thought of this, she felt much more relaxed. She just didn't know how to explain it to her mother. That night, Maddie went to Stacy's place for dinner. During dinner, Maddie gazed at Stacy as she thought about what to say. What's wrong? You have something to tell me? How could Stacy not have heard the news about her own daughter? Mom, I want to transfer schools. Maddie stood up, opened her school bag, took out the pamphlet inside and handed it to Stacy. When Stacy saw the school Maddie chose, she was stunned and asked, Why would you transfer to a school out of the state? I don't think the current school is good enough for me, Maddie lied. Stacy was a little disappointed. Are you serious? She did not understand why Maddie was keen on transferring. Yeah. Maddie knew what Stacy was thinking and immediately consoled her. Mom, it's all right. I'll be back for the weekends. Actually, it will be basically the same as now. How can it be the same? No matter what, you won't be in the city. I will always think of you being far away. Forget it. As long as you're happy, it's fine. You need to be careful, though. You won't have Jeff looking out for you, Stacy said. Mom, I'm sorry. Don't worry. I will come back every Sunday. Maddie was afraid that Stacy would feel upset. Stacy smiled. Don't worry about me. After all, you will get married in the future. If I can't stand being separated now, what will I do in the future? Maddie was stunned. Then the fork in her hand fell to the ground. What's wrong? Stacy asked. Nothing. Maddie lowered her body to pick up the fork. Only then did she reveal the pained expression on her face under the table. I'm married now. If it wasn't for Jeff, we wouldn't even need to be separated. Maddie picked up the fork with a calm expression. You should tell Jeff about this when you get back, Stacy said. All right. Maddie answered obediently. She wouldn't tell him, though. When the time came, she would leave immediately. Maddie got on the bus to go back home, but then she remembered that she should take a taxi back. Otherwise, she would have to walk a long way. Whatever. She would just tell Jeff that she stayed longer with her mom and take the bus. When Maddie got off from the bus stop, she saw another new bus parked there. The driver got out of the car and walked up to Maddie. "Do you want to get in?" Maddie stuttered. "Mr. Holmes ordered that this bus goes straight to the mansion, so there's no need for you to walk anymore." Was there anything that could make Maddie even more speechless than this? Jeff actually bought a bus to specifically take her from the bus stop to the mansion. After going back, she saw Jeff smoking in the living room. She walked up and asked, "How did you get a new bus route to the house?" "Well, you don't like being in a private car," Jeff said without raising his head. Maddie felt awkward. "Well, make it stop. Next time I go to school, I'll bring a skateboard with me." When Jeff raised his dark eyes, Maddie's mind flashed back to the scene into the car, and her legs went soft. Then she ran up the stairs like a whirlwind. She ran back to her room and closed the door. Then she leaned against the door like she was on the verge of collapse. Her small heart was trembling. Jeff, who was sitting on the sofa in the hall downstairs, frowned at Maddie's reaction. That night at dinner, Maddie had not spoken and only stared at the dishes in front of her. When Jeff saw, he passed her some food, but Maddie just stared at the food on the plate as if she was frightened by the sight of it. Then she started to shovel the food into her mouth. "Eat slower," Jeff frowned. Maddie slowed down her movements. Then she again ran upstairs after finishing her meal. The reason she gave was, "I'm going to study." It was almost time for her big exam. However, when she arrived at her room, Maddie was no longer in the mood to study. She felt weird being under the same roof as Jeff. As Maddie leaned her head against the desk, the door to the room opened. Maddie didn't even need to look to know who came in. She was already numb to Jeff's lack of respect for privacy. Silently, she raised her head, earnestly reading. However, every nerve in her body was affected by Jeff's actions. Jeff sat beside the desk with his long legs crossed. Jeff glanced at the book she was studying and asked, "Is there anything you don't understand?" Maddie shook her head. "No." "You're avoiding me." Jeff squinted his black eyes. Maddie's eyes flickered. "No," she repeated. "You think I can't see it?" Jeff's upper body suddenly leaned forward. Maddie, whose nerves were stretched taut, leaned away from him. "Come here." Jeff's face darkened. Maddie didn't move. Jeff didn't have any patience. He directly grabbed her and pulled her in front of him. Maddie's body leaned forward. Her face was almost touching Jeff's. "What are you afraid of? We are husband and wife." Jeff's voice was deep like a magnetic field, and it was very pleasant to the ear. Maddie's heart still skipped a beat. Her head was lowered, and her eyes were lowered. Jeff reached out and held her jaw, then lifted her face up. Maddie had no choice but to meet Jeff's dark eyes. "Do you feel disgusted when I touch you?" Jeff asked, his black eyes staring straight at her without blinking. Maddie didn't say anything as she tried to break free from the powerful hand that held her. "Jeff, Before Maddie could say anything, Jeff pulled her over. "Jeff!" Maddie's beautiful face turned pale. Then Jeff's body trembled. He touched her, and it was the same as when he was in the car. Don't! Maddie was trembling from head to toe, her voice tinged with tears. "You think I'm disgusting?" Jeff asked. Maddie bit her lips as she gasped for air with great difficulty. "I'm begging you, let go of me." Maddie almost cried. "We are husband and wife," Jeff reminded her again, and tightened his grip. "But I've always thought of you as, but you..." Maddie couldn't say it out loud. I only touched you after we were married, Jeff said. You kissed me before we were married, Maddie complained. Then why didn't you resist? Jeff asked. I resisted, but I can't fight you with my strength, Maddie said. Really? I thought you enjoyed it, Jeff said. You're lying. Maddie was so angry, and Jeff's arm strength was still so tight. Suddenly, her struggling movements froze, and her expression stiffened. What's wrong? Jeff asked, even though he already knew the answer. His voice became extremely hoarse, as if something had eroded it. It was terrifying and dangerous. You don't touch me, Maddie said. What are you afraid of? I haven't done anything yet, Jeff said. Maddie turned away in shame. If I want you, you'll never escape my grasp. Jeff's breath gushed out onto her delicate skin. So don't try to get away from me. Maddie felt as if the skin on her neck was being scalded, and her breathing became unsteady. However, this instability came from Jeff's words. He seemed to be warning her of something. Maddie knew very well that she was going to transfer schools, but she didn't plan to tell Jeff about this. She just needed to escape to college without anyone noticing. And there was no way that Jeff would know about her plan, right? Impossible. Why would I run? I don't have a chance, Maddie said, pretending that she knew nothing. The corner of Jeff's mouth twitched as he smiled charmingly. That's good. In Maddie's heart, she knew that Jeff was only using her as a shield to avoid marriage to someone else. So why did he have to do this? Maddie softly said, Jeff, I need to study. This is how it is, Jeff insisted. Why is that? I'm not used to it, Maddie complained. It's precisely because you're not used to it that you need to do it, so that you get used to it, Jeff said simply. Jeff put Maddie down from his arms, but when she held the book in her hand, she was unable to read even half a word of it. Maybe she could force herself to look at it, but her thoughts drifted back to what her mother's old husband, Dylan, had done to her before. She had felt so disgusted that she wanted to vomit whenever he touched her. However, after Jeff touched her, she was only angry, but not disgusted. Why? What's the difference? However, even if she didn't have that disgusting feeling towards Jeff, she still had to leave him. Didn't they say that when couples are separated from each other, a variety of problems can lead to a divorce? Maddie kept her distance from Jeff with this expectation. At the company, Lucia and Cole were making small talk in the company's break room. Cole said, Let me tell you something. What? Lucia asked. Dalen has sent people to the mountain town where you two were together before the accident. Cole paid attention to Lucia's expression as he said this. Lucia paused. That was the last time she was with Dalen before he lost his memories, and the place where Dalen fell off the cliff. When she recalled it again, Lucia's heart throbbed uncontrollably. It was her nightmare. She couldn't let Dalen go. If Dalen was investigating, did it mean that she could return to Dalen's side like before? However, it was impossible to know what would happen in the future. She had no prophetic powers, so she took every step with extreme caution so as not to hurt the child in her womb. That was the main point. Are you not happy? Cole felt that Lucia's expression was different from what he had imagined. Why should I be happy? Lucia asked. If Dalen finds out more information, it means that he'll know the truth. Dalen will realize that he didn't come to find you for a divorce, but to celebrate New Year's with you, Cole analyzed. Even if Cole didn't analyze it, Lucia understood this logic. However, she really didn't dare to take the risk right now. So what if he finds out? It's not like he's recovered his memories, Lucia said wistfully. But this could be very good. At least Dalen will begin to believe you, Cole argued. We'll talk about it when the time comes. Eat quickly, it's getting cold, Lucia said. It was obvious that Lucia was no longer willing to talk about it. What was going on? Lucia was not like this in the past. She didn't even show any signs of emotion when she heard such exciting news. This was abnormal. You won't... have you already given up on Dalen? Cole asked tentatively. It's not giving up, it's just slowly settling down, Lucia explained. Whatever. After going through so much, I realize that there are some things that I can't force. It's useless, so I might as well not do anything. Cole thought about it and felt that this made sense. Ever since Lucia had moved out of the mansion, she had definitely gained a deeper understanding of herself. Then let me ask you, what if Dalen comes to find you and asks you to go back to the mansion? Cole asked. I'm not going, Lucia said simply. Are you for real? Lucia lifted her eyes and looked at Cole seriously and said, No. Cole realized that he had to tell this matter to Spencer as soon as possible in case Lucia refused Dalen. If that happened, then Lucia could be in danger. Almost every day, Lucia would pay attention to her abdomen. She would look in the mirror when she bathed. According to her calculations, she should have been pregnant for around 2 months. However, she couldn't see any part of her abdomen expanding at the moment. It was still flat. Perhaps, should she go to the hospital when Dalen's attention wasn't on her? When Lucia returned to her bed, her phone dinged with a text message. Lucia was taken aback. She looked at her cell phone, and her fingers stiffened when she saw the number. Then she opened the message. The message read, Within 3 days you will be moved back into the mansion. I will accept your conditions. It was an order, not a suggestion. Lucia was stunned. Dalen had agreed to all 3 of her requests? Or did he find out the truth through the investigation? It couldn't be that fast. Lucia didn't know what Dalen was thinking. But really, she didn't want to talk to him. Lucia deleted the text, turned off the phone, and returned to her bed. Lucia didn't want to live in the mansion anymore. Most of all, she was afraid that something bad would happen if she got too close to Dalen. Lucia quickly fell asleep. The next morning, Lucia opened her cell phone. There were no missed calls and there were no additional messages, making her feel slightly relieved. At breakfast, Lucia decided to go to the hospital that day. She took the driver's car to the company, but she didn't enter the company and called for a taxi at the door. After getting in the car, she headed straight for the hospital. In the hospital, at the end of a corridor slightly off from the gynecological examination, Catherine and Robert were standing. Can't you accompany me to the exam? Catherine asked. Look at her. She has a husband to accompany her. Catherine pointed to another couple in the waiting area. Can't you be a little independent? Robert had an angry look on his face. If this wasn't a hospital, he would have just shouted and lost his temper. Catherine saw that he was really going to get angry, so she said kindly, Fine, just wait for me out here. There's no need to wait for the report after. Is that all right? Robert was about to nudge Catherine away when he saw Lucia walking over from the other end of the corridor. Lucia also saw Robert and Catherine. She had dodged Dalen. How could she meet these 2 people here? What the hell? She didn't want to be suspicious, but if she left without a checkup, wouldn't that be even more suspicious? Lucia showed an awkward expression. Catherine immediately stepped forward enthusiastically. Lucia, what a coincidence! What are you doing here? Catherine, hello. And Robert? What are y'all doing here? Could it be that Axel is gaining a little sibling? Lucia joked, trying to ease the tension. Catherine sounded. Robert's face stiffened. Catherine came back to her senses. Of course not. I'm just doing routine inspections. What about you? A routine check as well? Lucia felt extremely awkward. Robert broke the silence. I'll wait for you over there. With that, he left. Only then did Lucia feel slightly better. Catherine looked at Lucia with a puzzled expression. What kind of test are you doing at such a young age? Even if I am young, I still have to have checkups. Catherine, you don't know, but even young people have to be careful, Lucia said with a straight face. Catherine thought about it and said, You're right. I have a friend whose child is still unmarried, but she got cervical cancer and died, which is terrible. So I come here every 6 months to check up on my body. I have to be very careful. Come, let's go together. I have an appointment here with an expert. She can help with your inspection. Lucia thought for a moment. If she went to the exam with Catherine, she wouldn't be able to run when the time came. No, I don't need a specialist. I have a doctor I prefer, Lucia said. A doctor you prefer? What is his name? Is he reliable? Let me tell you, this specialist of mine has 30 years of clinical experience in gynecology and is definitely better than any doctor. Why don't you listen to me and try this doctor out? Catherine pulled Lucia in. Anxiously, Lucia pulled her hand away. Catherine was surprised. What's the matter? I'm sorry, I'm so nervous. I want to go to the bathroom, Lucia said. Catherine laughed. What's there to be nervous about? The doctor will just examine you, okay? Again, she then pulled Lucia into the doctor's examination room. A middle-aged woman was waiting inside. Upon seeing Catherine, she immediately stood up politely. This is Lucia. She's also here to do a gynecological examination. Can you help her? Catherine said. No problem. Go to that bed and lie down comfortably, the doctor said kindly. Lucia stood there without moving. Catherine then smiled and said to the doctor, I think she is shy. I will wait outside. Doctor, please examine her carefully. After Catherine left, Lucia stood there looking at the doctor nervously. Come on, it's fine. Don't be nervous. It's just an examination. The doctor had never seen a patient so nervous, but she was still kind. Catherine was talking to Robert outside. She's having an examination? Robert asked with a puzzled expression. Yeah. Catherine shrugged. What is she doing? Aren't she and Dalen separated? I think she must have had some sort of physical discomfort or she wouldn't have come, Catherine guessed. Robert pondered for a moment and said, Make sure the doctor inspects her carefully. After she finishes, let's request the report to see what's really going on. I know. Don't worry, Catherine smiled. A few minutes later, Lucia walked out of the examination room with a calm expression on her face. Catherine, who was waiting outside, immediately went up and asked, How are you? How was the inspection? There's no problem, right? I didn't ask. Lucia shook her head blankly. Child, how can you not ask? I'll ask the doctor for you, Catherine said as she went into the examination room. Upon entering, she noticed that the gynecologist was in the washroom. Lucia had taken advantage of this and ran out before the doctor could return. Lucia ran out of the hospital. She was so unlucky. Was there anything worse than this? When she passed the pharmacy, Lucia went in to buy a pregnancy test before returning to the company. An hour later, she was hiding in the company bathroom, looking at the 2 red stripes on the test. Lucia was not surprised at all when she saw them. She was really pregnant. Lucia touched her flat belly and thought, Good thing I didn't get checked in front of Catherine. Otherwise, I would have been found out immediately. You're really good. Mommy will definitely protect you well. It's not going to be like the last child, Lucia promised. 1 day passed. 2 days passed. On the 3rd day, Dalen returned to the mansion. He didn't need to ask the servant to know that Lucia wasn't in the mansion. She had actually dared to not appear. The sinister look in his eyes was terrifying. Dalen took out his phone and held it to his ear with a cold expression. At the moment, Lucia was eating lunch with Cole. She glanced at Cole before she walked out of the restaurant and picked up her ringing phone. Where are you? Dalen yelled. I'm eating at home, Lucia said calmly. Dalen obviously knew that Lucia was pretending to be dumb. His expression was already as cold as an icehouse. So you don't want your company anymore? Dalen's cold voice sounded. Lucia was instantly angered. Stop threatening me with this. I have nothing else. I won't repeat myself, Dalen said angrily. Lucia couldn't help but say, Fine, it's yours. I don't want the company. Then she hung up. Dalen was so angry that the whole mansion almost went frigid. Cole walked over and looked at the furious Lucia. What's Dalen doing now? How did you know it was him? Lucia was slightly stunned. Is there even a need to ask? Other than Dalen, who else can make you so angry? Cole wanted to laugh, but when he saw Lucia's mad expression, he held it back. Lucia didn't want to talk to Cole about her call with Dalen, so she said, He wants to buy the company again. We'll have a meeting tomorrow, so be prepared. It can't be, Cole wailed. Yes, he is a devil. Lucia cursed Dalen mercilessly. How did you provoke him now? Cole asked. You knew he was a demon, but you still dared to provoke him? Lucia flew into a rage when she heard that. She glared at Cole. You think this is my fault? Then what happened? Cole asked. Lucia immediately evaded the question, so she went straight to the point. She wanted to hear what Cole had to say as well. He told me to return to the mansion within 3 days, Lucia said. Cole immediately understood. You didn't agree? Correct. Lucia nodded. You shouldn't have refused him directly. You could have made a condition that at least he can't let that woman Victoria stay in the mansion. Cole gave her advice. Lucia looked at Cole helplessly. I already did that. Then he told me to return to the mansion within 3 days. I don't know what he was thinking. Tell me, why did he agree to my conditions? Lucia asked. Cole was surprised. You had more than one condition? 3. Lucia held up her fingers. She continued. Victoria is not allowed to live in the mansion. He has to return Mr. Richards' company, and he can't touch me. The first 2 are okay, but the last one, do you think it'll work? Why do I feel like you still don't want to go back? Cole asked. Years of friendship were not for nothing, Lucia thought. Cole immediately figured out her real intention. However, Lucia couldn't let Cole think that there was a reason behind her actions. As she tried to find an excuse for herself, her shoulders sank. Cole patted her shoulders with a look of understanding. I understand you were really hurt to the core by Dalen, and did this to give him a test. I think it was a good idea. Lucia wandered around the company during the day. When reading articles about pregnancy online, she saw that it was important to walk around so that the child will have better development. Then she wandered to the door of Tracy's office and directly pushed it open. Tracy didn't notice that someone had entered the room. Lucia saw that Mark was sitting with his back facing Lucia. As for Tracy, she was in Mark's arms. Lucia stood there wondering whether she should knock or walk away. She did not want to intrude on their private space. It had been a long time since Mark last visited the company. He had forgotten that Lucia did not like knocking on the door when she entered the office. Tracy stood up and saw Lucia standing there foolishly, looking at them. Tracy's face was stunned for a moment before she started laughing. You guys continue. I still have some matters to attend to, so I'll be leaving, Lucia said awkwardly. No rush. Why are you looking for me? Tracy asked frankly. At this time, Mark turned around and greeted Lucia. Hello, Mrs. Patrick. Hello. Lucia nodded in greeting. I came over to tell Tracy about the matter of Mr. Richards' company. As for the specifics, I'll let Tracy tell you. Goodbye, Mark said as he passed Lucia and left. You came to find me for a reason, right? Tracy raised her hand to invite Lucia to sit. Lucia sat down on the sofa. Actually, no, I was just bored. I wanted to come over and chat with you, Lucia admitted. Tracy looked at Lucia's blushing face and tilted her body. You saw us together? Lucia didn't know how to respond. It doesn't matter. We're all adults here in love, Tracy chuckled. I didn't see anything. Lucia would never admit it. She would never have thought that a sophisticated man like Mark could be like this in daylight. Tracy laughed again. It's fine. We're an old couple now. Don't you and Dalen hug each other like this too? Tracy had an understanding look on her face. Oh, that. Lucia's face stiffened, and she felt her face burning. She cleared her throat and changed the topic. Just now, Mark, what did he need to talk to you about? Oh, that, Tracy said very naturally. The Patrick family has already returned Mr. Richards' company back to him. What? They returned it? When? Lucia was stunned. It was planned a while ago. We only finished dealing with the relevant matters yesterday, Tracy explained. Lucia was very surprised. She thought that Dalen would not be willing to accept any of the 3 conditions she put forward. Rest assured, even with this reversal, Patrick's company will not be at a disadvantage, Tracy said. Of course, Lucia wouldn't worry about that. She would rather let Dalen suffer a loss. To him, that company was but a drop in the bucket. Lucia thought about it as she walked out of Tracy's office. If Dalen agreed to this condition, what about the other 2? Did he agree to those as well? Lucia hurriedly shook her head at her whimsical thoughts. No way. No way. How could Dalen force Victoria to leave the mansion? Lucia didn't want to think too much about it, nor did she want to return to the mansion unless Dalen regained his memory. That's right, Lucia thought. She should have said that once Dalen recovered his memory, she would return. Back in her office, Cole brought a document over and asked Lucia, Look, are there any problems with the list of key points for the meeting? Lucia looked at the words on the document and sighed. She sat down on the sofa and said, There's no need to prepare. What do you mean? Cole asked. It is useless against Dalen, Lucia said helplessly. It really wasn't her intention to give up on herself, but she had no hope. Cole was speechless. So we're just going to give up? Earlier, I went to Tracy's office, and Mark was there as well. He came to tell us that Patrick returned Longevity's purchase, Lucia said. Cole slowly turned his head. That means you're going back to the mansion? Wasn't that one of the 3 conditions? But if he doesn't satisfy your other 2 conditions, there's no point in giving back that company, right? Lucia looked at him hesitantly. You really think so? I'll help you ask Spencer. Cole excitedly went to get his cell phone. Wait, Lucia said. What's wrong? Cole looked back at her. Don't ask. Why? Lucia looked at Cole with a dark expression. You should ask if Victoria is in the mansion or if Dalen will really not touch me. As long as Victoria is not in the mansion, it will be fine. Lastly, Dalen is a strong-willed man, but do you think it's possible for him not to touch you? Lucia, since he's already compromised, give him a way out, Cole suggested. Seriously? Lucia was in disbelief. She stood up and returned to her break room, closing the door. Cole stood there puzzled. What happened to Lucia? It wasn't just that she didn't want to return to the mansion, but that she didn't dare to. She wanted to run far away when she saw Dalen. Lucia heard someone knocking on the office door. Then she heard Tracy ask anxiously, Where is Mrs. Patrick? Lucia opened the door and walked out. What happened? Lucia, why am I hearing that the Patricks want to buy our company again? Tracy was stupefied. Cole glared at Lucia. It was as if he was asking, What do you think we should do? Lucia lowered her gaze slightly. She no longer felt flustered like when Dalen first threatened to buy the company. However, she couldn't help but feel depressed. It seemed that the company her father left for her wouldn't be able to be preserved. It probably didn't matter. After all, the two of them were husband and wife. Lucia raised her gaze and looked at Tracy and Cole, saying, "You two can look for other work in advance." Cole and Tracy just stared at her. "Tracy, you'll be fine. You can go back to entertainment business. And Cole, you can get another business job since you have experience here now," Lucia suggested. Cole snappily replied, "That's right. I have experience being bullied by you." Lucia continued as if she didn't hear Cole. "Tracy, you and Mark are husband and wife. Can't you get Mark to find a job for Cole? You know, Cole works very hard. He's even more serious than the boss," Lucia said enthusiastically. Tracy helplessly held her forehead and said, "It's still too early to say these things." "Then do you think Dalen will cut us a deal?" Lucia asked. "Probably not," Tracy whispered. Lucia pursed her lips and didn't say anything. "That's right, Lucia. We have to do something. We can't just sit and wait for it to happen," Cole said. "You should have a way to deal with it, right?" Tracy said incredulously. Seeing that Lucia was silent, she couldn't help but say, "Go and seduce him and make him feel good. I promise everything will be fine tomorrow." She said it so simply and roughly. Cole and Lucia were speechless. "Trust me, this method will work." Tracy gave her a look of confidence. Lucia felt the corner of her mouth twitch. "Forget it. Let him be. I don't care." After saying that, she turned around and returned to the resting room. Tracy asked Cole in confusion, "Didn't her father leave Lucia this company, and now she just doesn't care anymore?" "Perhaps. She said that since they were husband and wife, if Dalen wanted to, he should just take it," Cole said hesitantly. Lucia naturally knew that Tracy's method was effective, but there was no need for her to seduce Dalen. She only needed to agree to Dalen's request and return to the mansion. But Lucia's small hands pressed against her belly. She felt that she had nothing but the child. For the first time in almost a week, she felt calm. Lucia had asked Tracy to hold a meeting with the higher-ups below and told her to do her best. Lucia stayed in the office for a long time in a trance. This was where her father used to work. She couldn't bear to change it, so she kept it exactly the same. She thought, after the company belonged to the Patrick family, there would be a new person here. Lucia couldn't bear the pain any longer as tears came to her eyes. She held back her tears bravely. It was hard work, and she had no choice but to accept it. Lucia thought back to the time when her father discovered that she and Dalen had married. She wondered if he would now regret agreeing to such a marriage. Eventually, Lucia went back to her father's house and stood in front of his portrait, prepared not to cry. However, standing there and looking at his photo, the tears couldn't be stopped no matter how hard she tried. In the end, she cried out, "Dad, I'm sorry. I can't keep the company anymore. Are you angry? I didn't expect. However, all of my hard work is for... I think you'll understand even if I don't tell you. Will you forgive me?" While she was confessing in front of the portrait, her phone rang not far away. Lucia walked over and looked at the caller ID. It was Dalen. Why was he calling at this time? Was he going to give up on buying the company? Lucia answered. "Hello. Have you thought it through?" Dalen asked. When Lucia heard his booming voice, she roared, "Leave me alone! You better consider this carefully. If you're happy, buy it. Take everything. I hope you will be satisfied." "Why do you ask?" Lucia responded. "You were extremely anxious when your company was being bought by him before. But now that Dalen gave you the chance, you don't even want it anymore. Is that why you don't want to be with him? Cole asked. Lucia's slender fingers, which were holding her cup, tightened. They became even more white and transparent, the same color as the white porcelain cup. So what if I agree to go back? As long as Dalen hasn't recovered his memories, he is still a danger to me. Lucia bit her lips and paused before saying, The chances of me going back are less than 0. Cole was stunned. You won't... Do you want to divorce Dalen? Cole asked tentatively. I don't think that's up to me. If Dalen wants to stay married to me, then no one can stop him. Lucia did not care much about what he did with her. All she had to do was guard herself and the child in her womb. I don't think Dalen will divorce you, Cole said. Lucia was amused by his affirmation. How do you know? Instinct. Lucia looked away. I need to go to the bathroom. I don't know where the restroom is, but I'll go ask the waiter. Cole waited at the dining table. Lucia asked the waiter and went to the bathroom. She stood in front of the mirror and washed her hands. As she did so, she leisurely looked at her face in the mirror. Then she lowered her head and continued washing her hands. As she lowered her head, she felt a strong presence behind her. A chill ran up her spine. Lucia looked up and saw another tall figure in the mirror. Before she could see the person's face clearly, she felt a cold sensation on the back of her neck, bringing with it a hint of pain. Her vision went black, and her body collapsed limply to the ground. However, she did not fall onto the cold and hard ground. Instead, she fell into the man's sturdy arms. Cole was playing with his cell phone at the table. Lucia had ordered a ton of dishes, but she still wasn't back. Lucia hadn't taken her cell phone. It was on the table, so there was no use in calling. It shouldn't have been a problem to go to the toilet, right? Cole waited for another minute. Lucia hadn't come back yet. Why did it take so long? Cole's face turned pale as he thought about what had happened in the company recently, and Lucia's calm and resolute mind. He immediately went to the washroom to look for her. He was worried that Lucia might try to hurt herself. Cole rushed to the bathroom. He checked the women's restroom. The woman inside was washing her hands. She was frightened by his sudden intrusion. However, Cole didn't care and looked around for Lucia. He asked the woman, Have you seen a girl? She has dark hair and green eyes. How would I know? What a freak. The woman left, weirded out by his presence. Cole was so anxious that he was at a loss for words. He searched around the washroom but didn't find any trace of Lucia. Could it be that she had returned to her seat? But there was still no one at the table. What should he do? Just as he was about to call the police, his cell phone rang. The caller was Spencer. He eagerly answered. Spencer, it's bad. Lucia is gone. I just had dinner with her and she went to the bathroom and now she's gone. Should you tell Dalen about it? Would Dalen help her? Or should I call the police? Don't be anxious. The young madam was taken away by Mr. Patrick, Spencer said. Taken by Dalen? Cole breathed a sigh of relief. That scared me to death. Why did Dalen want to take Lucia away? Does he want to make peace with Lucia? Probably. I hope so. I've already paid for your dinner, so eat your food. After Spencer said this, he hung up. Cole looked at the dishes on the table and felt guilty. However, if Lucia went to Dalen's place, she would eat better there than here. Lucia woke up in a daze. Her vision was still blurry and not clear enough. She still didn't understand what had happened. She turned around and saw a tall shadow standing there. Who was it? Lucia tried her best to open her eyes to see. When she began to recognize Dalen's face, her mind started to clear up. Her blurry eyes suddenly widened as she looked in disbelief at the cold and gloomy Dalen. Why are you here? No, where am I? Lucia was still at a loss when she looked around, but when her gaze landed on herself, she screamed out in fright. Ah! Lucia looked at Dalen in fear. Let me go! Dalen looked at her struggling and said in a low and dangerous voice, Do you think it is possible? Lucia knew that Dalen wouldn't let her go. Being stared at like this, she was so ashamed that she wanted to disappear. Glancing at the quilt beside her, Lucia shifted her posture and stretched out her legs to bring it closer to her. Dalen saw her flustered and exhausted appearance. He stepped forward and threw the blanket to the ground. You! Lucia glared at him with a blush. Stop trying to run away from me. Dalen's upper body leaned forward like a wild beast. Lucia was so scared that she didn't even dare to breathe. Did you think I would let you go? Dalen, what are you trying to do? Lucia's heart was thumping wildly as she looked at him warily. What do you think? Dalen asked. Lucia was so frightened that her mind buzzed. When she came back to her senses, she said nervously, Dalen, why don't you let me go? I didn't do anything wrong. Why are you trembling? Dalen held Lucia's small jaw and stared at her. Lucia didn't respond. Are you afraid? Wasn't your courage commendable on the phone yesterday? Dalen slightly tightened his grip. Lucia was so frightened. Her elegant brows furrowed as she let out an uncomfortable groan. I'm not afraid. I'm just cold. Can you cover me with a blanket first? She was almost naked, and it was very dangerous for her to talk to Dalen in this state. You're cold? I'll make you feel warm right away. After Dalen said this, he pulled himself closer. Then Dalen lowered his head and hugged her tight. Lucia's long eyelashes trembled. Lucia struggled only a little out of shock, and her legs almost couldn't do anything, so she could only helplessly rub against the bedsheets. When she was about to pass out, Dalen pulled back. Lucia's face was red from embarrassment, and she was breathing rapidly. When the oxygen had restored her consciousness, her watery eyes met Dalen's black eyes. She pleaded while panting, Dalen, don't be like this. Let me go. Didn't I tell you to come back to the mansion? Dalen suppressed the hoarseness in his voice, but it seemed to be even thicker. Listen, I heard it, but I also put forth my conditions, Lucia argued. I'm curious about your conditions. I can't touch you. As a wife, shouldn't this be your duty? Dalen said fiercely. So what if I'm your wife? You still have a lover, Lucia retorted contemptuously. Dalen stared at her red and angry face with his black eyes, and suddenly laughed. He laughed until Lucia's hair stood on end, and her scalp went numb. What are you doing? Why are you laughing? Lucia asked. Didn't I say that this is your duty? Dalen slowly stood up. He turned a blind eye to Lucia's refusal. What do you mean? Lucia was so anxious that her entire body tensed up. She was so shocked that her heart almost stopped. If Dalen were to continue, something would definitely happen. Lucia's face turned pale as she thought about how her internal organs were about to be crushed. Dalen, spare me. I'll follow you back to the mansion, okay? Lucia wanted to stabilize him first and think of a countermeasure later. He unbuttoned his shirt, revealing a firm and strong chest. The sexy lines of his muscles were very clear, and they were filled with power. Although she was surprised, Lucia was so scared that she rolled over immediately to the side of the bed. However, just as she was about to roll under the covers, she felt Dalen hug her back. Let me go! She yelled. Lucia's body trembled as if she was unable to bear the intensity of the impact. Her breath quickened and her voice trembled. She finally called out his name. Dalen. Do you really not want me? Dalen's voice was low, hoarse, and excited. No. Lucia didn't know why she was so sensitive. Was it because she was pregnant? But she couldn't do this. She couldn't let Dalen touch her. Lucia pushed against Dalen's chest, trying to push him away. However, no matter how much she tried, she couldn't get away from Dalen. She suspected that even if she pulled out Dalen's hair, he wouldn't let her go. Lucia's body trembled violently as she struggled with a flushed face. However, her mind was working quickly. She couldn't let Dalen get closer to her. Otherwise, the child might be in danger. But she also couldn't tell Dalen the truth. Furthermore, she couldn't go head-to-head with Dalen. But what could she do? Her hands and feet felt helpless. "Dalen, can you let me use the washroom once? I really need to," Lucia said. "Says who?" Dalen challenged her. Lucia panted as she quickly racked her brain, continuing, "I will agree to any request you make, and when I return to the mansion, we can do whatever you want. But just don't purchase my company." Dalen retreated from his hug and raised his head. He looked at the red-faced Lucia. "Have you thought it over then?" Dalen asked. "Yes, I have decided. I will follow you back to the mansion. You can do whatever you want, but the company will stay with me. Isn't that reasonable?" Lucia bargained. "Sure, but you have to sleep with me now." Dalen was too excited. His black eyes were greedy. Lucia was so frightened that she couldn't keep up her smile. Sleep with him? How much would that cost her? What about the baby? "All right, but let go of me for a minute," Lucia said. Dalen's strong fingers held Lucia's lower jaw as he said in a low and dangerous tone, "You won't be able to escape from my sight." Lucia still didn't move. Dalen held her jaw and lifted her up to kiss her. Lucia's breath caught in her throat as she endured it. Not only that, she unconsciously responded and kissed him back. Just then, Lucia looked to the side while kissing Dalen. Then she grabbed the lamp with her hand and slammed it on Dalen's head with force. Just a second ago, Dalen was still excited, but in the next second he was knocked unconscious and fell on top of Lucia. Lucia pushed his heavy body to the side and heaved a sigh of relief as she looked at the unconscious Dalen. She got out of bed and wanted to get dressed, but her clothes could not be found, so she could only wear the white bathrobe from the hotel and put on her shoes. When she reached the door, she turned around and looked at Dalen, who was still unconscious on the bed. Then she opened the door with relief. However, she ran right into a person on the other side of the door. She clutched her chest. "Oh my God!" Standing outside the door was Spencer, as well as a crowd of bodyguards. Spencer was also stunned for a moment when Lucia walked out. With a single glance, it was clear that she had fled in panic. Dalen definitely wasn't letting her go. If he had let her go, why would she only wear a bathrobe? "Dalen is resting. I'll be leaving." Lucia ran off as soon as she finished her sentence. Spencer stood at the door and looked at the bodyguards. Without making a sound, he turned around and walked into the room. When he saw Dalen lying unconscious on the bed, he knew that Dalen had been knocked unconscious by Lucia and that she had fled in panic. Lucia knew that Dalen would wake up soon, so she went back to her father's house, but she didn't dare to stay. She went back to her room, put on her clothes, took some money, and ran. She knew that Dalen would definitely want to punish her when he woke up. Then she got worried that maybe she shouldn't have hit him on the head. After all, Dalen's head had been injured before. But she couldn't worry about that. Right now, her own life was in danger. In the hospital, Dalen opened his eyes. "Mr. Patrick, you're awake?" Spencer stood beside the bed. Dalen sat up from the bed. The pain that came from his head made Dalen frown. "The doctor checked and said you weren't seriously injured, thankfully," Spencer said. Dalen thought about what happened, and his eyes immediately became sharp. "Where is she?" "Miss Lucia, she's gone," Spencer said hesitantly. "She ran away?" Dalen looked at Spencer maliciously. "Go and find her." Spencer immediately ordered his bodyguards to find Lucia. Dalen sat on the bed with his face full of hostility. He couldn't believe that Lucia actually dared to knock him unconscious. Lucia knew that she couldn't stay in the city. After all, Dalen could bring the entire city under his control. Lucia wanted to get on a high-speed train, but just as she finished buying her ticket, she saw familiar bodyguards in the waiting room, which frightened her so much that she quickly hid. She thought she could just wait for them to leave, but she had bought her ticket for the next train. If she continued to waste time, she wouldn't be able to make it on the train. Only after a long time did the bodyguards leave the hall. Lucia immediately headed to the waiting room. She saw more bodyguards coming from the other side. Luckily, the bodyguard didn't spot her, so she quickly turned around and ran into the supermarket next door. Why were Dalen's bodyguards everywhere? Lucia knew it was not a good idea to stay there any longer, so she turned around and left the high-speed rail station. At this point, she would have to buy a new ticket, which meant that she would have to go back to the ticket window. And what if the bodyguards went there again? This place was definitely filled with surveillance cameras. How could she escape? And she thought about it for a moment. She definitely couldn't outrun Dalen's inescapable net. Needless to say, Spencer was good at his job. But maybe she could use Spencer's relationship with Cole to her advantage. Lucia saw a phone booth nearby and told the taxi to stop. She got out of the car and went into the phone booth to call Cole. "Hello? Who is this?" Cole answered. "Cole, it's me," Lucia said. "Lucia, aren't you with Dalen? Have you eaten?" "I have something to talk to you about. Can you tell Spencer to turn a blind eye to his subordinates when they arrest me?" Lucia asked. Cole was shocked. "What's going on?" "Remember when we were eating in the restaurant and then I went to the bathroom? Well, Dalen appeared out of nowhere and brought me to a hotel. I knocked Dalen out. When he woke up, he sent his guards after me. Cole, you have to talk with Spencer. I don't want to be captured by Dalen. I will be miserable." Lucia almost cried. However, Cole was completely unable to recover from the shock of this story. This was too much. What if Spencer doesn't want to? Cole was worried. After all, Spencer was very loyal to Dalen. "Can't you try? If it's really not possible, then there's nothing else I can do." Lucia sobbed. "Where are you now?" Cole asked. "In a phone booth on the street," Lucia said. Not far from the phone booth where Lucia was, Spencer was sitting inside a black car, watching her. "Then where will you be staying tonight?" Cole asked. "I found a place to stay," Lucia said. "What happens when Dalen finds you? Do you really think you can hide from him forever? You need to find a really safe place to stay. Maybe you shouldn't have knocked him out." Cole lectured her, but Lucia would do it again for the sake of her child. "All right, since you have time to lecture me, why don't you hurry up and call Spencer? If Spencer turns a blind eye, then Dalen won't be able to find me, and I can feel more at ease." Cole said helplessly, "Fine." After Cole hung up, he called Spencer. When Cole spoke his request, Spencer directly refused and even told him not to interfere in this matter. Otherwise, if Dalen found out and became angry, everyone would be in trouble. Lucia didn't come out of the phone booth. She was still waiting for Cole's reply. The call came quickly. Lucia didn't know if this was a good thing or a bad thing. Cole's voice was distressed. "Lucia, Spencer told me not to meddle in this matter. I'm so mad that I want to break up with him. I can't believe he's not even willing to accept such a small request. Spencer is truly loyal to Dalen. Don't think too much about it. I didn't expect Spencer to agree. I just wanted you to ask." Lucia hung up and walked out of the phone booth. It was already dark. The light bulb above the road was dim. Lucia sighed sadly. She didn't have a family that she could go back to. Just as Lucia was walking aimlessly, she came to an alley. Looking inside, there was a hotel. Just as she approached the hotel, a figure suddenly appeared in front of her, blocking her way. Lucia looked at Spencer in shock. She wanted to turn around and run. You'll be caught if you run that way, Spencer said. Lucia was stunned. What did that mean? She looked at Spencer with hope. You're not here to capture me? Spencer didn't answer her directly, but he said, You can't run away like this. It's impossible for you to escape the city. Then can't you just pretend that you didn't see me? Even if you are Dylan's guard, the two of us are friends, right? Lucia put a sweet smile on her face. I can let you go now, but do you think it's believable for me to never find you? The first person Mr. Patrick will suspect is me. I won't take that risk. Lucia hesitated. She knew what Spencer said was true. Dalen was smart. Then what do you want to do? You want me to go back with you now? It was obvious that Lucia was unwilling. She had a face full of resistance. I'll give you 3 days. You must return to Dalen within 3 days, Spencer said. What if I don't? Lucia said rebelliously. The more time passes, the more impatient Mr. Patrick will become. Then when he finds you, you will be even more miserable. Even if that's the truth, don't say it out loud. Don't you know it's scary enough for me? Lucia screamed and pulled at her hair. You could stay at Cole's place for the time being. Be careful not to be found out by anyone else. Spencer looked at the hotel behind him. The conditions here are too terrible, and you still need to eat. With that, Spencer left. Lucia looked at the hotel. It was indeed very bad. She had no other choice. She had forgotten her hunger because she was so nervous, but now that she was being reminded to relax, she felt hungry. She went to Cole's apartment. Lucia reached Cole's door and knocked gently, again and again. Cole, who was sitting on the sofa worrying about Lucia, suddenly heard a familiar voice coming from outside his door. What was it? Cole opened the door. As soon as he opened the door, a person jumped in like a cat. Then the door closed quickly. Cole was taken aback when he saw who it was. He asked in surprise, Why are you here? Shh! Lucia pressed her slender fingers against Cole's pouting mouth and motioned for him to be quiet.